Your Honor. Counsel.
Sanderson.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. David Dooley did the murder. And through what the defense presents throughout this next month, we're going to show you that the Commonwealth cannot meet their burden of proof that David Dooley murdered. Now, on 5/29 is true. 5/29, David Dooley went to work. Normal day for him, normal day for him as well. He worked there for several years, 5, 6, 7 years. Got in there with the other employees that worked at the warehouse, got in the door, got there, and he went about his normal routine of cleaning. You'll hear evidence, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that the Friday before that weekend, on 5/20, I think this occurred on 5/29, that weekend before on Friday, no one on upper management was where Michelle Mockby's office was. No one was there that weekend, so there really wasn't much to do when he went there. He had, I think he said he ran the cleaner, vacuumed the cleaner up there. There was very little, because nobody was in the offices. There was hardly anything to clean. He indicated that he went to the bathrooms and nothing had been put in the trash can. Nothing was put in the trash can from the men's room. He briefly went into the conference room, and that was basically it. But you're going to hear his reiteration as to what he did throughout several courses of several interviews, and we're going to talk about that here and after. But what he did, he's going to explain. Then he went back downstairs. Of course, he didn't see anybody upstairs. When he went up there was no blood. He didn't see any spot up there. He didn't see anybody there. He went about his normal course of doing his job. Went to give the tour. You'll hear lots. These are some, until you start hearing more about the case, these are a little bit foreign to you. But he went about his business. He went and he cleaned in the inventory control room. He cleaned the bathrooms in the hallway in there. He cleaned bathrooms out near where the warehouse is. And he finished up. And, they say that the murder is about 6:01, 6. We really don't know the exact time. We know it was when she came in. But there'll be some questions about exactly when she came in and exactly what she did when she came in, because there's numerous statements that have been made about that are all kind of inconsistent with each other. Now, he was on his phone, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, supposedly just murdered somebody, and on his phone at 6:20, calling his wife, and he indicated and told the officers that he was on the phone because she's not well. She had a big house to clean that day. And I think there was some other thing on top of that, but it was a combination of things that he went home, he wanted to check on her, make sure she was up. Because he couldn't get a hold of her. And there's a telephone call that indicates that. And then he moseys on out the door. Nobody actually sees him leave, because you know why? Because everybody's in the warehouse and everybody's working. And they'll testify to that. Nobody's manning the door to see who comes in and out. There's no documentation to support when somebody comes and when somebody goes. So he goes home and he sees his wife. They have a surveillance video that they actually saw him going home. And he leaves at 6:31, and he's back, because I guess he wants to discover a body at 7:01. He gets back at 7 o'clock. He wants to discover a body for some reason. It doesn't make sense. He goes back, he parks in his parking lot, in his parking space, at like 7:0, I guess he got there something like 7:01. And he walks in like he normally would, and if you notice that the prosecution indicated that there was a witness that said, oh, but some guy said that he approached him and told him that, oh, I went home because I had to change my pants because I ripped them. And that's like saying, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, first of all, you have to understand who the witness is. This witness that said that also, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, had the opportunity to kill Michelle Mockbee himself, based upon the records that we have and his own testimony. And that statement didn't come up, not in his first statement, but later, when he knew through either the media, through the police officers, through some of the upper management who had advised all the employees that David Dooley left that day. And David Dooley, by the way, just wanted everybody to know, I murdered somebody, went home, changed my clothes, tried to hide the evidence, and I want you to know about it, Joe Seeger. I want you to know about it. Okay? So you have to listen to the credibility, think about that statement. He walks in, he goes into, and he goes into the break room, and at that time, they had realized, Yuska and Roger Hibner had realized that there was a stain up there. They thought it was blood. They go back and forth. They aren't sure what it is. So Ed Yuska calls down to Kenny Hicks, which is a guy that's down there in the break room. David walks in the break room. And from all accounts from the witnesses that were there, it's indicated that had anybody been hurt. Is there any blood? We think there's some blood up there. And they told David Dooley, look, there's a problem up there. You know, there's some, there maybe somebody's got hurt. There's some blood up there. Kenny Hicks will verify that, and he will reiterate to you what he said to David Dooley. So David Dooley goes up. Says, you know, I was just up here working, and I didn't see any blood up there. So he goes to Ed Yuska, tells him that. Ed Yuska and him start looking, start searching. They start seeing a trail of blood, and ultimately discover the body. On the 911 tape that you hear, Ed Yuska says, we both discovered the body. Now, after the 911 call, or during the 911 call, you'll hear that the 911 call operator said, look, you need to send the maintenance guy downstairs to make sure that nobody goes up the steps. If somebody had tried to enter the front entrance and tried to go up the steps. So I guess possibly so they wouldn't ruin the scene. So David Dooley was described when someone actually saw him. He went downstairs, he went up towards the door, the front door, and in his mind, being as distraught as he was, they said when someone first saw him, they said he was shaking. And when he walked in from the parking lot, they indicated that he was fine. He was, you know, nothing was wrong with him. He looked fine. And then, after he discovers the body, he's shaking, he's crying. He can't think. He believed, and he told the officers when he took the statement, that he thought he was supposed to be watching the front door as opposed to watching who comes up. He couldn't even think about that. And what's interesting about it is David Dooley says, I was so scared that someone would come and get me. And I was like, what am I going to do if somebody tries to get out this door? What am I going to do to stop him? He moves back because he's afraid. Now, if he was the killer, what would you be afraid of? Because you're not going to be running out the door. So they took everybody in. The police had been called, of course, by that time. The police had arrived, and they took everybody like into. They were in the lobby for a little bit, and then they took everybody. They separated some of the people that they separated people who found the body, so that their statements, you know, could be clean, I guess is what you want to call it. And then they took each one of the warehouse people. They took their statements, talked about what they did and whatnot, including David Dooley. But as the prosecution said, his statement wasn't recorded. Everybody else's was. Joe Seeger's statement, another guy, again, that had the opportunity to commit the crime, his statement wasn't recorded either. Now, they can say there's some batteries and whatnot, but you got a 30-year detective that's experienced with this kind of work. And if it's a battery problem, you put the batteries in, and since you know it's so important to get a statement on the very day of the murder, you double check and make sure the batteries are not working, so you've got a valid statement. That didn't happen. Now, and it's true, you're going to have to listen to the evidence. We don't have a reiteration of how the questions were asked of David Dooley when that statement was taken. It very well could have been like what the prosecution said. What did you do here today? And he reiterated what he did here that day. And he didn't mention the meeting. But once the surveillance video came out and they found that he had left, that was a big deal. It was a huge deal because if somebody left around about, it's like 6:31, maybe that person could be the killer. And the evidence will show that the absolute focus in this investigation became David Dooley because he left. So they hightailed it out there to his house. I mean, this guy, you know, there's no evidence that you're going to hear that he left, that he ran away. He came back to the facility to finish his job. But the police officers came, the two detectives, and they interviewed him. And despite what the prosecution said, he volunteered, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he volunteered to them that he left. He said, oh, by the way, before they even asked him, I forgot to tell you yesterday, I left you. Now, thereafter, as a result of seeing the surveillance tape, a search warrant was issued. And the search warrant, they went in and searched his house, found nothing. Found no blood, found no bloody clothes. They searched his truck. And when they search his truck, they search it, but they also do a thing called Blue Star or something. And you'll find out, you'll hear what that is. And they Blue Starred that truck, found not even a pinprint of blood. Crafty guy within a period of 30 minutes because he left there at 6:31, goes home to check on his wife. There's only so much time to go there and then come back at 7:01 and he's cleaning his truck. Now, going back to when they took the interview and everything, at the time that they took the interviews from everybody, they took DNA swabs from everybody. They took their shoes and they took pictures of their shoes, but they never took the shoes from anybody. They didn't examine them. They didn't take them for processing to see if there was any blood on them or traces of anything. They were just left there. They took fingerprints of everybody, and everybody cooperated. They went out and searched people's vehicles, found nothing from him. They found some weapons from others, but nothing in David Dooley's truck that would connect him to this at all. Everybody had their clothing on. They didn't take it from them. They didn't take their cell phones and actually take them into evidence so they could examine them. Didn't do any of those things. Now, once he became a suspect, and you have to understand it, and I think that John did a great job by telling you, people have been here for 20, 30 years. They all knew each other. They all worked together with each other. In addition to the fact that, they cared about Michelle Montague. They knew her. They loved her. They were scared. They were bewildered. They looked amongst themselves, like, who could do this? Who could have done this? And as time went on, if you take a look at their initial statements, nobody said anything specific about David Dooley thinking, oh, he did it. But as time went on, once they determined and found that he left that day, their statements started slowly changing. And the officers were there all the time, especially in the first month or so. They were talking to upper management. Upper management was talking to them. And you could tell just from things that are just so innocuous, like the testimony or his statement was, I opened the door for Sherry, this is just in the morning, I opened the door for Sherry Baker and I think it was Ruthie Colmar. And the next thing you know is their statement was, oh no, well he opened the door but I grabbed it from him. And the statements would get worse. Initially when remember I said to you that he was shaking and then he was crying, then it became, oh well he wasn't shaking that bad. Oh, he wasn't really crying. I didn't see any tears. The statement started getting worse towards him. He was upset. Oh well, he wasn't really, just a little bit upset. Everybody had a different perception, and the perceptions kept getting worse. Everybody had a different observation of him. And you'll see that and it's as a result of, we believe, the testimony will show, that it's as a result of them all believing in the police, and this is who it was, all believing themselves that it couldn't have been any of them, it had to be somebody else other than them. Now, as the prosecution told you, they were trying to do their best to submit things to the labs, to try to see if, they were pretty confident that something was going to come back, with David Dooley, connecting him somehow to this murder. And nothing came back. They wanted it to come back, but they found no hairs to connect him. They found no fibers on her body to connect him. We were not able to examine the bag, the rest of the bag over her head for us to do an independent examination of the bag to test for whether there were any hairs in that bag, whether connecting David Dooley to that, or whether or not there was any fibers in there, DNA. And the fingerprints that came back were fingerprints that if he had committed the crime, and you'll find this out once you hear more about the details, if David Dooley, or the killer, would have touched certain things, and you'll hear that, and those things that he touched, they took the fingerprints and he was excluded. Again, they found no blood in his vehicle, there was no blood in his home, there was nothing. The DNA was still out. They were hoping and praying that the DNA would clinch it for them because they'd already got their suspect. They already got their guy, and that was it. Now I want to say something to you that, we got a couple emails, and this is, they arrested David Dooley on 9/27/12. He was a killer as of 5:30. They left the killer out for all the month of June, all the month of July, all the month of August, and most of the month of September. And with no physical evidence, and just the statements that you've heard here. Well, not heard, but there's more, just based upon statements that throughout the course of the investigation. And an email was generated from the police officers that were investigating the case that said, right after his arrest, re-interview all of Thermo Fisher employees, hoping that now that Dooley's been charged, that it causes them to recall something significant. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, they did come back on October 1st to this Thermo Fisher Scientific, and they talked to the employees, and they had a big meeting with employees and said, look, we've got these scanners and some scanning records. Apparently what they do in that corporation or that business, they track what the people do as far as labor functions. And with the labor functions, there's a time of where they are at certain places. And they found several gaps in time. So they came back to them and said, look, and it's right on the statement. It was recorded. They told the employees, hey, you need to button these up. I'm not paraphrasing. You need to button these up because there's spaces in time. And we don't want a defense attorney to come in here and think that somebody else did this. And they actually said, we're going to post these standing records up here on the bulletin board or some kind of board for you guys to really work on and think about. And ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about opportunity to do something, we have got, they say, look, David Dooley had the opportunity to do it. Of course he did. He had the opportunity to do it because he's walking around the building doing his janitorial duties. But there are other people in that warehouse that also had the opportunity to do it too, that were completely ignored. And those people gave statements to these officers indicating that I was upstairs in the office where she was, where her office was, at 5:20. And then that same witness said, another time. And then that witness said, another time. And then he ultimately ended up telling the truth, I guess, from his last statement that said he was up there in between the unloading of 2 trucks. Which, guess what? Was at exactly 6 o'clock when she was murdered. He puts himself up there saying that he was getting rubber bands and giving a big report that had to be put on there. Ignored. Because guess what? That report could have been handed to her when she walked in the door, maybe. If it was at 6 o'clock. And he testified about how busy they were, and how backed up they get because of the fact that they had a holiday, and that nobody, and not a whole lot got done on that Friday before, and it was the end of the month, and inventory had to be placed everywhere it was supposed to be. But you had David Dooley, that was set aside, regardless of all those statements. And then we have another fellow at the same time, same thing, and these 2 fellows were the ones that were supposed to have seen her last when she came in the door that day. Both of them. And their stories are inconsistent with each other. One guy says a story about a coffee cup being up there. They were all both up there talking, and his coffee cup was on there when she came in. He made a big deal about moving the coffee cup. When Joe Siegert was asked that, he goes, I don't know anything about a coffee cup. Several statements are inconsistent. And I know that they told you that someone saw her actually taking the time cards. Well, one of them says that, but the other says, I think she did, I'm not sure. And it doesn't make sense now, but we will make it make sense as we go throughout the course of this trial, because it's just too much to handle at this point. This Doug Tungate also is, I guess, well, this is identified, and it's not a big secret, they know it. His time, he was supposed to get in, he clocks in at 6 o'clock. And there's a span of time of 21 minutes from that 6 o'clock time when he clocked in that he's not accounted for. And they can say all day long that he was getting his safety check, getting his equipment, but from all accounts, from other warehouse people that have to do the same type of thing in order to get going, it takes a couple minutes tops to get that done. So where is he? And then there was one warehouse guy there that they said, we didn't even see Doug Tungate. Now, and then we've got, the prosecution will indicate that David Dooley's statements are all inconsistent. I will go over every single word that he says, and I will attempt anyway to show you that they are not inconsistent. There are some things with his September statement, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, they gave him, when they went to arrest him in September, we're talking 5 months, and you're going back and you're asking a guy who obviously knows he's a suspect, that, hey, what did you do? What did you do? I want you to tell me what you did again. What did you do? What did you do? I mean, it's a wonder you didn't even get the words out. They said, well, there's no mission. He made this a mission, but like I told you before in that first statement, or the second statement, when the very next day, he tells them without them even asking, said, I want to be honest with you, I forgot, I wanted to tell you that I did leave that day. There's other people that made omissions that the police interviewed that day that failed to say lots of things. But they didn't crucify any of these people, but they crucified him. And there's other things, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you know, we've got the surveillance video that we're talking about. I think it just kind of stopped right after they looked at the surveillance video. They looked at the surveillance video, I believe. They didn't really look at the surveillance video. Again, they looked for maybe a couple days or whatnot. But then they looked at the surveillance video in September of 2014, 2 years after David Dooley's arrest. And their whole idea, anyway, that they put in their reports, by the way, and through other testimony, was that nobody from the outside could have done this. Because these two surveillance cameras would pick you up going in or out, and there's no other way to get out around this premises. But September 14 came around, somebody decided to do a little work, and they found that there was an odd guy, I guess, a guy, walking in on the camera, and guess what? Never left. And this was at 8 o'clock the night before the murder. And in order to figure out what the heck to do with this guy, they said, well, oh, must be a trucker. And there were two truckers, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. There was two trucks that had to be unloaded that morning, that next day. This was Memorial Day. And there was two trucks. It was an Ozark truck and an online transit truck. And they were to be unloaded. They stayed overnight that day. So investigating officer said, oh, it must be one of those guys. So I guess he interviews the guy, again, in September of 2014. But he never asks him, was that you? He gets a driver's license. And he looks at the driver's license and said, oh, it looks like him to me. That's who it must be. Nothing else. Doesn't go down to Tennessee or Texas where the guy lives to check to see if it's him. He doesn't send him a video and say, is that you? And it's very interesting, even though, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and the Ozark driver, the truck left right about the time that Michelle Mockbee's car had come in. It was very close to that. In an investigation of this nature, where you've got, and there's evidence that truckers were going in and out of that building and not running around. And most of the time, I think that there's no question that the employees indicated that. And they might have seen or might have not, truckers, but the investigation did not include asking this trucker, did you see anything? Did you see anybody maybe following her into the building or something? Did you see her walking in? Because she would have walked right by him into the door. Didn't bother. Didn't because the trucker left, shortly after she got it. So I guess it didn't matter, but that was part of it. Now, they talked to the other fella, and the other fella left at 7:01. So, and there are other things, and we're talking about the DNA now. And the DNA stuff, I guess back, now I forget the date exactly, but I think it's in 14 sometime, well, some of the DNA will come back. But there was DNA that was found. And you're going to hear from the detective, ladies and gentlemen, that the detective says, their own detective says, whoever killed this woman put the bag over her head. Whoever killed this woman dragged her down that hallway. And they swabbed for those areas where foreign DNA should not be. And it came back, and there was DNA on the arms. It didn't belong to David Dooley, pointing to someone else. There was DNA on, you'll see a little part of her underwear. There was DNA on there they found. It didn't belong to David Dooley, pointed to someone else. There was DNA on the bag, and I will say this, the DNA experts will teach you about DNA. I'm not the best about it, so I'm going to try to do it just a little bit, not teach you, but the DNA guy will say, and testify that almost you could breathe on something and you can get DNA on something. And they told us that if he opened the bag as the janitor, his DNA is going to be on the bag. sure enough, he was right. The scientific evidence works. His DNA was on that bag as a minor contributor, though. There was DNA on the bag that did not belong to him. That was a major contributor. There are other things throughout this investigation, and I don't like bad-mouthing people. I don't want to. But it's so significant that anything, I'm not saying, I am saying anything. When you see when reviewing the notes of the investigating officers, and then reading their report, when they actually wrote their report, the things that were good for David Dooley were buried. They never made it to the report, ever. And it's not just one thing, it's several things. So, when we talk about motive, and there is going to be no question, all you got to do is read the time cards, all you got to do is look at the surveillance thing. And there's probably no question that they were cheating on their time cards. And I will say this, they touched on it, the Commonwealth touched on it. This woman was bludgeoned to death. The blows were so massive that it cracked her skull open in 4 different areas. And it wasn't, our experts are saying this, with a tape. It was something else. Now, you want to equate motive with, they've indicated that, oh, that's real, that's motive here, time cards. Okay, that maybe he was trying to break into the office. Well, there was no shavings on the ground to show that someone was breaking into the office. And if you really want to think about it, there's a, what's the thing, some kind of bolt lock or something, I can't think of the word for it right now. And if you're not going to get into an office with a screwdriver, if there's that lock, that bolt lock or something that's on there. If you really wanted to get in that office, I mean, it was a cardboard door, every single officer probably looked at it. I mean, it was basically one of those thin doors that are kind of cheap. You wanted to get in that office, you take your foot in, you kick it in. Pretty simple, if you really wanted to get in the office. And what were you going to get in the office for? To steal your own time card so that you would be a suspect? You'd be the first suspect. And Tom Seaman, who is the head manager of all that, will testify that all the time cards are, they copy them, they keep a copy, and they send them on to the corporate office, the copies. So what are you going to do? Steal your time card? They've already got a copy. The motive doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense. But I'll tell you what it does. Dan Mockbee, ladies and gentlemen, in addition to these other, I'm not excluding anybody else, because they've got just as much, we don't know what their motive is, but there's a possibility that they had the opportunity to do it too. None of it makes sense. Let's talk about Dan Mockbee. No alibi, ladies and gentlemen. I was sleeping. No alibi. Maybe he wasn't there. No one said that. No one could say that he was. Nobody actually saw him there. Maybe he asked somebody else to do it. But he was the only one who knew exactly what time she was going to be coming in that morning. We asked Thermo Fisher to give us all like the punch details or the swipe details of who came in and what time people came in. And Michelle Mockbee, yes, she would come in, and she would come in early on days that she would have to do payroll, okay? But this never was a set time. Some of it was 5:45, some of it was 6:30, sometimes it was 6:45. She came in at all different times. But Dan Mockbee knew exactly what time she came because she woke him up and because he supposedly kissed him goodbye, and out the door she went. Now, who has the most to gain? Let's talk about that. It's not just, I'll tell you the benefits that he would gain and did gain as a result of her death. We've got life insurance, $774,000 in life insurance. We've got another life insurance policy, Stonebridge, $30,000. We've got $10,000 from Wachovia. We've got $4,000 from Hartford Life. We've got $76,000 from workers' comp benefits that if you die at work, you get more. Now, he had to put some of that in the estate account, but all these records here, and I've got about 5 more boxes of them. He took some of that money and he put it aside, spent it. But there was a significant amount of debt, we'll talk about that, which he had to pay. But in addition to the $76,000, he also received $30,000 from the company just because. He also received $12,000 from her pension. He also received what was left of her 401k. And if they weren't getting a divorce, he ultimately would receive if they had been getting a divorce, and I will talk about that too, but he received all of the equity in the house. All of his pension, didn't have to split it. And he also receives $331 every single week as a result of her death from workers' comp. He also receives $220 every single week for his 2 children. He also receives Social Security benefits over $3,000 to $4,000. I can't remember the exact figure. It's somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 a month that he's collected on and will continue to collect on. Motive: $11 job, $11 an hour job. I mean, 600. The contract was for $1,200. I mean, we take the figures, a couple thousand versus $1 million or more, and it continues. And it gets better. They say now, nobody introduced or gave the defense any evidence about how the fact that they were financially in trouble. Financially in trouble, they were financially in trouble. Up to the tune of close to $65,000 in debt. The probate estate will prove it on its face. All the claims from all the credit card people. And the police officers knew it. They examined her, I guess her answering service or something, or I don't know whether it was her cell phone or whether it was an answering service by her desk or whatnot. Creditors were calling. She'd been sued. And what's interesting, well, there's consolidation companies, I think, that if you get in trouble, you can contact these consolidation companies, plastered all over her checking account statement. There was companies that she had made agreements with that she was making payments on. And, you know, Mr. Mockbee had testified, don't know much about the finances. About $25,000 in debt, I guess. I don't really know. Yeah, I knew. There was $15,000 he got as a loan out of his 401k, not all that long before the murder. And that money was put in to pay bills. He had to sign for it. It was put into a checking account and to pay bills, trying to get them caught up, in particular on the mortgage. He can get up here and he'll say whatever he wants to. They can go there, they can go there, and all whatnot. But the most bothersome and troublesome thing, when we say, well, could there be a payoff to somebody? Could somebody else do it? I got the figures. The first year of her death, $204,058.19. And I don't believe I'm off, so let's just say it's $200,000. Cash withdrawals. You take every single statement. It's not just a cash withdrawal to put into another account. By the way, he's got about 7 of them. He's gone to different branches. He would take $8,000, and I don't care, he could have spent $774,000, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. He could have spent it all the next day. Does that really prove anything? Not particularly. He can spend it on whatever he wants, go out to eat, do whatever he wants to with it. But the thing that is bothersome, the thing that is motive, is when you take out cash and it's not accounted for. You can say, I put it into a business, where's the records of it? Where is it? Where did it go? It's unaccounted for. Now, to his credit, he did put some money in an account, 529 accounts for his kids. Not all that much, but some. And he had an annuity. But that's cash. First year altogether of the cash, as of May of 2018, over $390,000 in cash. There's an explanation. Pretty suspect to me. Should be to you. And it gets more. There's more. The police interviewed him the first day when it happened. Not recorded. Nobody else is recorded except for David Dooley, one of the big people here that we're talking about. Dan Mockbee, not recorded. Joe Seegert, not recorded. Dan Mockbee wasn't recorded either. And the next day, he made some statements, and there was no other formal interview. And they had gone to see him a couple times, asked him a couple questions, nothing else. Didn't take his cell phone, didn't examine it. We did. We subpoenaed the records of his cell phone. And we found, just as the prosecution says, that he did receive telephone calls that morning. And the one phone call came in from one of his employees at 8:09 a.m. in the morning. 8:09, remember that, 8:09. Because we also checked his computer and ran a program on his computer. And at exactly the time, and he testifies, he tells the officers, yeah, this guy called me and told me that the police were there. They were blocking the entrance, and you can't get in. Also differing statements about whether he said that there was a body. But at 8:09, the exact time, right after the guy gets off the phone call, 8:09, he was in a program on his computer. It's called Cypher, scrubbing his deleted files from his computer. 8:09. Maybe he's like, well, I guess the job is done. I know it's done now. Like, I have to hurry up and get rid of all. Make double check, double sure that the evidence is, any evidence of any files that I deleted will be gone. And what this program does, these experts will tell you. They are, our expert is absolutely positive that that happened. And when we gave them to the prosecution, they got a stuff from them saying, oh, well, no, he wasn't on it. And we found the error in that report that they did, and our guy will tell you that he was on there. I don't know what more motive you could have. 8:09, he's called and told, police are here. And then 8:09, he's on his computer, scrubbing his deleted files from his computer. And you wouldn't have known that necessarily if he had, unless you got his phone records, which they didn't do. And I think they said he loves his wife and it was a great relationship. Oh, there was a few more things that we found on the computer. Dating sites on the computer. Now, some of them could say are pop-ups. Very well could be pop-ups. Some of them are. But our guy will say some of them are pop-ups, but some of them are not. And she is walking around. They'll say that they found her marriage certificate in her bag that she was carrying around. Well, does it mean anything? Maybe, maybe not. We have more evidence of that, but we're going to save some of that. And we've got more evidence about possibly where some of that money went to. And when you talk about, ladies and gentlemen, you know, he in sworn testimony said everything's great. She was everything to him. Now, we subpoenaed the monument company, Lewin Monuments. He had all this money he's taken. He hadn't even paid for her monument yet. That's what this case is really